The massive research vessel, Horizon, drifted silently through the outer reaches of the Carina Nebula, its sensors probing the darkness for signs of the impossible. Captain Rebecca Sterling stood at the observation deck, her dark eyes fixed on the strange readings that had brought her ship to this remote corner of space. "Captain, we're picking up the signal again," Lieutenant James Wright called from his station. "It's stronger this time. Definitely artificial in origin." Rebecca nodded, her heart racing. After 6 months of following mysterious energy signatures across this sector, they were finally closing in on their target. "Take us in closer, but maintain safe distance protocols. We don't know what we're dealing with yet." As they approached, the source of the signal became visible, a massive artificial structure orbiting a dying star. Its architecture was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered, with sweeping crystalline spires that seemed to capture and redirect the star's fading light. "Life signs detected," announced Dr. Natasha Kumar, her voice tight with excitement. "Thousands of them. And they're different from anything in our database." The discovery of the Etheri changed everything. They were a species of energy-based beings who had evolved in symbiosis with their star. Their bodies were composed of living light, contained within crystalline shells that allowed them to maintain physical form. Their civilization was ancient and incredibly advanced, but it was also dying. Through careful communication attempts, humanity learned the tragic truth. The Etheri star was reaching the end of its life cycle centuries ahead of their predictions. Within 5 years, it would collapse, taking their entire species with it. Their technology, though impressive, wasn't capable of sustaining their unique biology long enough to reach another compatible star. Humanity faced its first major interstellar diplomatic crisis. The Etheri's existence challenged everything humans thought they knew about life itself. Some argued for non-interference, citing the potential risks of helping an unknown species. Others saw it as humanity's moral duty to prevent an extinction event they had the power to stop. Rebecca found herself at the center of these debates as her first contact report made its way through diplomatic channels. She couldn't forget the image of Ambassador Lyran, the Etheri representative who had first communicated with them. The being's crystalline form had pulsed with a light that seemed to dim with every passing day, like a candle fighting against the wind. "We have to help them," she argued during an emergency United Earth Council meeting. "We have the technology to create temporary containment fields that could sustain their energy forms during transport. We could save millions of lives." The council chambers erupted in heated discussion. Director Marcus Thorne, head of Earth Defense, stood in opposition. "Captain Sterling, your compassion is admirable, but we know nothing about these beings. Their power requirements alone could drain our resources. Not to mention the security risks of bringing an energy-based life form into our territory." But Rebecca had an ace up her sleeve. "The Etheri have offered to share their knowledge of stellar engineering in exchange for our help. Think about it, their understanding of solar dynamics could revolutionize our own energy production. This isn't just about saving them, it's about advancing humanity." The debate raged for weeks while the Horizon maintained its position near the Etheri station. Rebecca spent the time learning more about their culture through continued interactions with Ambassador Lyran. The Etheri's appreciation for art and music surprised her. They created stunning light sculptures that told stories of their history. Finally, the Council reached a decision. Humanity would attempt to save the Etheri, but with conditions. A joint task force would be established to handle the evacuation, and strict protocols would be put in place to ensure both species' safety. As Rebecca delivered the news to Ambassador Lyran, she saw the being's light pulse brighter than ever before. "Your people's kindness will not be forgotten," Lyran said, their voice a harmonic whisper in Rebecca's mind. "But I must warn you, not all of my kind will accept help easily. Pride runs deep among the Ancient Ones." Rebecca smiled grimly. "We're used to overcoming challenges. We'll find a way to make this work." As she returned to the Horizon, Rebecca watched the dying star's light play across the Ethery station. She couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much larger story, one that would either unite two vastly different species or end in tragedy for both. The massive evacuation fleet assembled at the edge of Ethery space was an impressive sight. 20 colony ships, each modified with experimental containment systems designed to house thousands of energy beings. Engineer Daniel Reeves watched them through the viewport of his research vessel, pride and anxiety warring in his chest. The containment field modifications are holding steady in all simulations, he reported to the holographic projection of Captain Sterling. But we won't know for sure until we test them with actual Ethery subjects. Time for testing grows short, came another voice, accompanied by a shimmer of golden light as Ambassador Lyran materialized in the conference room. The Ethery's crystalline form pulsed with worried energy. The stellar deterioration accelerates. Already we lose outer sections of our city to the radiation surges. Daniel turned to face the ambassador, still amazed by how the being's presence made his skin tingle with static electricity. We're ready for the first trial transfer. We just need volunteers. That proved to be the first major hurdle. The Ethery Council of Elders, led by the conservative Archon Voss, opposed the evacuation plan. Their crystalline forms blazed with defiant light as they addressed their people. For 10,000 years, we have been one with our star, Voss proclaimed. Now these newcomers, these beings of flesh and metal, presume to tear us from our home? To trap us in their crude machines? Better to face our fate with dignity than become pets of a lesser species. The word stung, but Daniel understood their fear. Everything about humans was alien to the Ethery, their solid bodies, their primitive energy requirements, their brief lifespans. To them, entering a human-made containment field must seem like being asked to sleep in a coffin. But Ambassador Lyran and a growing faction of younger Ethery fought back against this resistance. They organized demonstrations, their combined light forming massive artistic displays that depicted possible futures, one of extinction, one of survival and growth among the stars. Daniel found himself working closely with one of these progressives, a young scientist named Reen. Her light was a subtle blue-white, and she approached human technology with fascinating curiosity. Your species is so young, she observed one day as they calibrated containment field frequencies. Yet you've achieved so much. Perhaps because your brief lives drive you to accomplish things quickly? Or maybe because we're too stubborn to accept limitations, Daniel replied with a smile. He'd learned that Ethery could perceive human facial expressions, though they found them oddly rigid compared to their own light-based emotional displays. Their breakthrough came when Reen volunteered to be the first test subject. Daniel watched, heart in his throat, as she allowed herself to be guided into the containment chamber. The field activated, its carefully tuned frequencies creating a space that could sustain her energy form. For a tense moment, Reen's light flickered erratically. Then it stabilized, and she moved freely within the field, her voice coming through clear on the communication system. It's different, but sustainable. Like being embraced by a warm current of solar wind. The successful test changed everything. Young Ethery began volunteering in groups, and even some of the older conservatives had to admit that the containment fields proved more comfortable than expected. But Archon Voss and his hardline supporters remained obstinate. They scan our containment systems constantly, Daniel reported during a security briefing. I'm worried they're looking for weaknesses, maybe planning to sabotage the evacuation. Captain Sterling's expression was grim. We can't force them to come with us. But we can't let them interfere with saving those who want to live, either. The situation reached a critical point when the star began ejecting massive plasma streams, destroying one of the outer Ethery cities. The catastrophe killed thousands who had waited too long to evacuate, their light extinguished in an instant. As the death toll mounted, Daniel and Reen worked tirelessly to increase the containment field's capacity. Their long hours together led to deeper conversations, shared moments of wonder and fear. Daniel found himself captivated by the way Reen's light danced when she was excited about a new idea, while she became fascinated by the complex interplay of chemical reactions that created human emotions. "Your species feels so deeply, so intensely," she marveled. "We thought physical bodies would be limiting, but they give you a different kind of freedom, don't they?" Before Daniel could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. The star was entering its final death throes far sooner than predicted. They were running out of time, and over half the Ethery population remained unevacuated. The race to save a civilization had become a sprint, with no room left for political debates or cultural adjustments. As emergency protocols activated across the fleet, Daniel caught Reen's glow pulsing with determination. They both knew that the next few days would determine not just the fate of the Ethery, but the future of human-alien relations. The universe was watching to see if two radically different species could work together in a crisis, or if pride and fear would doom them both. The evacuation command center was chaos incarnate. Daniel hadn't slept in 36 hours, monitoring containment field stability across the fleet while processing new groups of evacuees. Reen's light flickered beside him, her usual bright blue-white dimmed with exhaustion as she helped translate the increasingly panicked communications from her people. "Another solar flare building in Sector 7, Lieutenant Wright announced from his station. "Bigger than the last one. Time to impact, 4 hours." Daniel rubbed his temples, fighting fatigue. "How many still in that sector?" "Approximately 40,000, Reen answered, her voice harmonizing with worry. "Mostly elderly and followers of Archon Voss." The mention of the Archon made Daniel's jaw clench. The conservative leader had moved beyond mere opposition to active interference, spreading rumors that humans planned to experiment on evacuated Ethery. His followers had even attempted to sabotage several containment fields, nearly killing hundreds. Captain Sterling's voice cut through the tension. "We're moving the Horizon and 3 other ships to cover Sector 7. Prepare for emergency evacuations, authorized or not. I won't watch more people die from stubbornness." As they prepared for the operation, Daniel noticed Reen's light pulsing in an unusual pattern. "What's wrong?" "My parent creator is in Sector 7, she admitted. They believe Voss's warnings. They think humans will destroy our essence, turn us into batteries for their machines." Her light dimmed further. "I've failed to convince them otherwise." Daniel reached out instinctively before remembering he couldn't actually touch her energy form. To his surprise, Reen moved closer, allowing her field to brush against his hand. The contact sent tingles up his arm, like touching static electricity, but somehow warm and alive. "You haven't failed," he said softly. "Your parent will see the truth when we save them anyway." Their moment was interrupted by new alarms. The solar flare was accelerating, formation time cut in half. They had 2 hours, not 4, to evacuate 40,000 beings who might actively resist rescue. The next 120 minutes became a blur of desperate activity. Ships moved into position, extending their containment fields like massive nets. Security teams deployed to protect evacuation workers from potential violence. Through it all, Daniel and Reen worked in perfect synchronization, their different forms of existence complementing each other in ways neither species had imagined possible. The operation went smoothly until they reached the central temple where Archon Voss had barricaded himself with his most devoted followers. The ancient Ethery's light blazed with fanatic intensity as he faced down Captain Sterling's security team. "You think you save us?" he challenged. "You imprison us. Corrupt us. Better extinction than degradation. Parent creator, please." Reen moved forward, her light reaching toward a dimmer figure hiding behind Voss. "The humans have proven themselves. Look at me, I work with them daily. My essence remains pure, but now I understand so much more. They don't want to change us, they want to help us grow." For a moment, something shifted in the Elder Ethery's light pattern. Then a massive solar prominence erupted from the dying star, its radiation overtaking the temple's shields. In the chaos that followed, choices had to be made instantly. Daniel didn't hesitate. He overrode safety protocols, expanding the containment field to maximum capacity. The strain made the generators scream, but he held it together through sheer force of will. Reen linked her energy to the field, strengthening it, their combined efforts creating a safe passage for everyone inside the temple. "You would risk your own life to save those who hate you?" Voss asked Daniel afterward, his light showing confusion and the first hints of respect. "That's what humans do," Daniel replied simply. "We protect life, no matter what form it takes." The evacuation of Sector 7 succeeded with minimal casualties. Most surprisingly, many of Voss's followers, including Reen's parent creator, began voluntarily boarding the evacuation ships. Seeing humans and progressive Ethery risk everything to save them had accomplished what months of arguments could not. As they watched the last group of evacuees being processed, Reen's light intertwined briefly with Daniel's fingers. The gesture was intensely intimate by Ethery standards, a sharing of essence that left both of them momentarily breathless. "I never understood before," she said softly, "how beings of such crude matter could contain such luminous spirits. Perhaps we are not so different after all." Daniel smiled, feeling the warmth of her energy pulse through him. "Maybe that's the real reason we found each other. Not just to save your people, but to learn that life, no matter its form, has the same heart." A new alarm shattered their moment. The star's core was collapsing faster than expected. Phase 1 of the evacuation was complete, but the hardest part still lay ahead, getting millions of energy beings safely away from their dying sun before it took them all with it into oblivion. The star's death throes painted the evacuating fleet in shades of crimson and gold. Emergency klaxons blared across all 20 ships as the stellar core began its final collapse. Captain Sterling's voice cut through the chaos with steel-edged clarity: "All ships, execute emergency departure protocol. We have 18 minutes before total stellar collapse. 18 minutes to move millions of energy beings safely out of the blast radius." Daniel's fingers flew across his console, routing additional power to the containment fields. Beside him, Reen coordinated with other Ethery scientists, their combined light creating complex patterns that helped stabilize the evacuees' energy matrices. "Containment Field 3 showing critical strain," Lieutenant Wright reported. "We're losing integrity." Daniel watched in horror as the field fluctuated, threatening to release 5,000 Ethery into open space. Without thinking, he rerouted power from his section's life support to reinforce the field. The temperature around him plummeted, his breath frosting in the increasingly thin air. "Daniel!" Reen's light pulsed with alarm. "You'll die." "Not if we're fast enough," he gasped, fingers numbing as he worked. "Help me balance the load across the remaining fields." Their species' differences became their strength. While Daniel's human mind could quickly calculate power distributions, Reen's energy form could directly interface with the Ethery evacuees, helping them minimize their power consumption. Together, they managed to stabilize the failing containment field. But the star wasn't finished with them. A massive solar prominence erupted, its plasma tentacle reaching for the fleet like a grasping hand. The horizon's shields buckled under the assault, and several smaller vessels lost power completely. Engineering reports total shield failure in 6 minutes, Sterling announced. "We need options, people." Archon Voss, who had remained to help coordinate his people, suddenly moved forward. His ancient light blazed with purpose. "We can help. Our bodies are made to channel stellar energy. Together, we could create a deflection field." "The strain could burn out your essence," Reen protested. "Then we burn brightly one last time, protecting both our peoples," Voss replied. Without waiting for approval, he began gathering energy from other volunteer Ethery, their combined light forming a massive barrier between the fleet and the dying star. The sight was magnificent and terrible. Hundreds of Etheri, once bitter opponents of human intervention, now risking their existence to save everyone. Their light barrier held back the stellar fury just long enough for the fleet's engines to power up for emergency faster-than-light travel. Jump coordinates locked, Wright called out. All ships report ready except, we've lost contact with the stellar dawn. Their engines are dead. Daniel's blood ran cold. The stellar dawn carried 10,000 evacuees. Without power, they'd be incinerated when the star collapsed. He looked at his console, then at Reen, an impossible idea forming. The containment fields, he said. We could create a bridge between ships. You want to transfer 10,000 Etheri through open space? Sterling's voice was incredulous. The power requirements alone would burn out our systems, Daniel finished. But if the Etheri help channel the energy, like they're doing with the barrier. Reen's light brightened with understanding. Yes. We can create a controlled energy conduit. But Daniel, coordinating something that precise, would require direct interface between human and Etheri consciousness, he nodded. I know. The room fell silent. Such a merger had never been attempted. The energy involved could fry Daniel's neural pathways, while the complexity could shatter Reen's essence. But 10,000 lives hung in the balance. Do it, Sterling ordered. Everyone else, prepare for emergency jump the moment they finish. What followed was beyond human description. Daniel felt Reen's energy merge with his mind, their consciousness blending into something entirely new. Together, they became the bridge, their combined will shaping the containment fields into a glowing pathway between ships. Through their merged awareness, they guided the stellar dawn's evacuees to safety, each transfer feeling like fire through their shared consciousness. As the last Etheri crossed, the star began its final collapse. Jump now. Sterling's voice seemed to come from a great distance. The fleet vanished into FTL speed just as the star exploded. When they emerged safely at their destination hours later, Daniel was unconscious, and Reen's light was dimmer than ever before. But they had succeeded. Not a single life was lost in the evacuation. As medical teams worked to stabilize them both, their hands remained linked, human flesh and energy field continuing to share something that transcended physical form. They had proven that the gap between their species could be bridged, not just with technology, but with trust, courage, and something very much like love. 3 months after the Great Evacuation, the combined fleet approached their destination, a young star system with conditions perfect for Etheri life. Daniel stood on the horizon's observation deck, his neural implants still tingling from the remnants of his merge with Reen. The experience had changed them both in fundamental ways. The medical teams had been baffled by their condition. Daniel's brain now produced trace amounts of the same energy that composed Etheri bodies, while Reen could temporarily maintain a semi-solid form through concentration. They were living proof that their species could be more than just allies, they could evolve together. The survey teams report optimal conditions, Captain Sterling announced to the assembled human and Etheri leadership. The star is young, stable, and matches all parameters for Etheri habitation. Ambassador Lyron's light brightened with joy. Our scientists have already begun designing the new city stations. With human engineering and our solar manipulation abilities combined, we can create something unprecedented. The aftermath of the evacuation had transformed both societies. The Etheri's brush with extinction had humbled them, while their willingness to sacrifice themselves to save the human ships had earned humanity's deep respect. Even Archon Voss had become an advocate for cooperation between their species. We were wrong, Voss admitted during the planning session. We thought our differences made us incompatible. Instead, they make us stronger together. The construction of New Etheria became a testament to this truth. Human ingenuity combined with Etheri energy manipulation created structures that defied conventional physics. The city stations drew power directly from their new star, while also helping regulate its output, preventing the premature aging that had doomed their old home. Daniel and Reen led the Joint Scientific Commission, their unique connection providing insights into both species' capabilities. Their relationship, once considered impossible, became a symbol of hope for further integration between their peoples. "Watch this," Reen said one evening, concentrating until her energy coalesced into an almost solid form. She reached out, touching Daniel's face with what felt like the gentlest breeze. "Soon I'll manage full physical manifestation, even if only briefly." Daniel smiled, letting his newly developed energy sensitivity reach back to her. "And I'm starting to see the world as you do, patterns of light and energy everywhere. We're creating something entirely new, aren't we? Not just a civilization, but a new way of being." Their work pioneered what became known as the convergence, a gradual, voluntary blending of human and ethery traits that enhanced both species while preserving their unique characteristics. Some humans developed energy sensitivity, while some ethery learned to interact with the physical world in new ways. 1 year after the evacuation, the first permanent settlement on New Etheria was completed. As Daniel watched the inauguration ceremony from the central platform, he reflected on how far they'd come. Captain Sterling, now Admiral, stood beside Ambassador Lyran, their contrasting forms, solid and light, representing the harmony their peoples had achieved. "Today marks not just a new home," Sterling addressed the gathered crowds, "but a new chapter in the story of intelligent life. We've proven that difference need not mean division, that change need not mean loss, and that together we are stronger than we could ever be alone." Reen's light intertwined with Daniel's fingers as they watched their dream become reality. Around them, humans and ethery worked side by side, their children, both energy and solid, playing together in ways once thought impossible. The dying light of their old star had led them to a new dawn, one that promised a future brighter than either species could have imagined alone. "What do you see in our future?" Daniel asked Reen as they observed their new star's light playing across the city's crystalline spires. Her light pulsed with the pattern he'd learned meant joy. "Endless possibilities, my love. As infinite as the stars themselves." Above them, the young star burned bright and steady, its light nurturing both flesh and energy beings alike, a constant reminder that in the vast darkness of space, the strongest force wasn't gravity or nuclear fusion, but the power of two different peoples choosing to reach across the void and lift each other toward the light.